The town and the county have issues. They have issues that are difficult to solve, and we're not going to try and solve them during what we're about to do. But we are here to discuss specifically how the county town itself is faring, because tonight our debate is called Love Northampton. And we're going to start by asking our panel of four, who are here representing various stakeholders in Northampton, just to tell us why they love Northampton. Just to start us off, if you like, on a positive note, starting with Rob Purdy. Rob, from the BID in Northampton, the Business Improvement District.
Thank you, Stuart. The reason I love Northampton is because of the people, particularly the positive people. In my job, I'm lucky enough to meet lots of community groups, lots of businesses, and indeed recently lots of residents. And the thing that resounds with me is how proud they are of this town, how much they care about the town, and how much they want to make the town better than it is. And I think that's worth some love from all of us.
Where's Suter from Stefan's Jewellers?
Well, I love Northampton because of the history. I think we've got a glorious past and we've got a very bright future. So that, for me, is the key for me with Northampton.
Laura Graham from the Happy Hood. And before you answer the question, just explain to anybody that doesn't know, what is the Happy Hood?
So the Happy Hood is a quarterly magazine that has been created by myself and my friend Paige, celebrating all of the local independent businesses, spotlighting community groups, charities and people all doing amazing things to make Northampton a great place.
So why do you love Northampton?
Why don't I love it? I love it for every reason. For all of the faces staring back at me, I love it for the green spaces, I love it for the architecture. I choose to live here, and it's a fantastic place.
And Councillor Tim Hadland. Tim, why do you love Northampton?
Well, my family have been here for generations. I went away and tried various other places, and this is the place that I came back to because it's where I wanted to bring up my family and have my permanent home. Wonderful history, great surroundings, super people, as already been said, and fascinating enterprise as well.
Reasons to love Northampton. If you've got a reason to love Northampton, then please indicate and we will come and talk to you. If you've got a reason where you're concerned about the future of Northampton, we'd like to hear that too. And I'm talking to our audience here in All Saints Church, right at the heart of the town, with all sorts of issues surrounding it. On the one side, you have the County Council. Yeah, silence. On the other side, you've got the drapery leading to Northgate bus station. Yeah. And you've got Abington Street in another direction, Gold Street going down towards the railway station. Mike Ingram is with us, town historian. Have people always loved Northampton, or have there always been reasons why they would question saying so?
There seems to have been a glitch over the last few years, but going back further, particularly with the Victorians, were constantly celebrating our history, full of articles in the Chronicle and the Mercury at the time. Just talking about our history, and everybody loved the history.
Is this a down point in the history of Northampton, with the situation this town is in right now, or should we be as positive as the views we've just heard?
We should always be positive. You shouldn't ever give up on anything like that. Perhaps we've just lost our way at the moment and need to re-find it again.
And maybe we might find some answers to that. Now, I'm going to come to the lady sitting behind you, Becky Adams from Screen Northamptonshire. Screen Northamptonshire, tell us what you do.
So we make films in the county. We're a social enterprise, so we do it with people who might not be able to experience the film industry otherwise, and we show off Northamptonshire as the film industry because we think it's got so much kind of going for it.
And the town of Northampton in the middle of all of that?
Absolutely. Everyone goes on about the great transport links, which I know we get really bored of, and I don't want to sell Northampton just on its great transport links because there's so much more. But it's perfect. You know, there's a film studio just been announced, I think yesterday, in Oxfordshire. There's a huge amount of potential for us to be a centre of the film industry, which I know sounds kind of mad, but actually we've got this huge kind of creative history behind us, and we're right next to all those big kind of centres of film. Why not use film as a way to show off what we do have?
And pride contributes to love, so people seeing their hometown on the screen surely encourages that. Absolutely.
The kids that we work with a lot, we take them out to places, we put them on our location database. We're in one of them today that's on the database. And they suddenly realise all those assets that we do have.
Steve O'Brien is sitting just behind you. Steve is from the University, Dean of Faculty of Health and Science. We have the new campus, of course, just down the road as well. Is that a reason to love Northampton?
I would say absolutely. The university is a social asset. It wants greater links with the town. It sets itself up as a changemaker campus, and we have lots of students there bringing in an enormous amount of income into the town of Northampton. I think as well, in my Faculty of Health and Society, we're training lots of health professionals and social care professionals. We all need that, and they're making an incredibly valid contribution to the health and well-being of this town. We have had some teething troubles though, haven't we? There are always teething troubles, but we've dealt with that, I think, and we're moving on. Students will be students wherever they are, whether they're in Northampton, Southampton or wherever. But I think it is a positive move, very much for the town, and I'm really pleased with the campus that we've got down there, and I think we will go from strength to strength. Matthew Torreson sitting next to you. Matthew, you're described as being from the voluntary sector. In what way?
A community activist, I guess, and I've worked as a community development officer and a funding officer as well.
We're hearing a lot of positive things so far, which is good. There are some negatives about Northampton. You see both sides of it.
I think we're in uncharted territory in terms of the voluntary sector. It's always existed to give added value to the state, whereas now it seems to be having to take over statutory roles, which is never designed for that. It was always to give us those, make life more enjoyable. So it's really, really unknown territory we're in.
Is that because of the political scenario that this town and this county finds itself in, which we're constantly told they're not alone? Other parts of the country have similar issues, but it does seem Northamptonshire has really claimed the high ground, if that's the phrase to use for that, in terms of national publicity.
I think the County Council was the first of many around the country that are going to hit these problems. And what we're talking about, we're not talking about a voluntary sector that relies on handouts. These are organisations which are providing services on behalf of the County Council and the Borough Council. You have service level agreements with them and you do valuable work. Of course, all of those have gone. We've got a lot of vulnerable people in this town, certainly, have found some of their greatest advocacy organisations up against the wall at the moment, which is terrifying.
What about the retailers? Are they up against the wall? Wes Souter, you were talking about why you love Northampton. How difficult is it to be a retailer, to run a shop in this town?
Well, as a fellow stakeholder in the town in terms of retail, after speaking to various other different people in different sectors of retail, I think it's quite tough out there. I think we're on a double front personally. I don't think it's Northampton alone. I think retail is being hit hard by the internet and various other different things like Brexit, etc. So I think it's consumer confidence. But of course my request to the council is that they understand these pressures that the retailers are under and try and do something about it, in essence, because people can now buy things without any barriers on the internet with free postage, etc. So we must make the retail experience as seamless as possible without any barriers.
Your shop, of course, is on the one end of Abington Street, if you like, perhaps slightly peripheral to the main town centre itself. But you must notice what happens in terms of footfall, in terms of whether people are coming in to shop in the town. When you lose House of Fraser, when you lose British Home Stores, when you lose Marks and Spencer's, for whatever reason they go, what impact does that have on your business? Well,
in the last 6 months, we've seen a reduction of about 20% in our footfall. So it does impact us. I always consider us to be a bit of an oasis in the desert. But on, in the fact that we've lost Marks and Sparks and various other different stalwarts of the town, then it does have an impact on us.
There's a lady over here who's just indicated, so other people are having to move around so I can get to her, in the church pews here at All Saints, who says she wants to say something. What is it you want to say? First of all, tell us who you are.
Hello, I'm Beverly Mennell. I come from Kingsley. I've lived in Northampton for 15 years now, and it's been an absolute pleasure to live here. When you ask the question, what are you proud of? I'm very proud to live in Northampton. The people are lovely, they're friendly. I've been a borough councillor, I'm retired now, for Kingsley. And the very most important reason I'm very proud to live here is because I'm a saved cancer patient from the marvellous Hospital of Northampton General, and I've also had another major surgery, having a total knee replacement as a disabled lady. So I've got a huge gratitude to Northampton for what they've done for me. Thank you.
I think that deserves a round of applause, doesn't it, before we go any further? Thank you very much. And thank you to our very athletic audience for making room for me to step in there. Tim Hadland, you are here representing the Borough Council rather than the County Council. It's the County Council that's made a lot of the headlines for reasons that we have been well documented and we all know very well. Have they made your life more difficult?
Well, I think they certainly made it more complicated because people generally see life as dealing with the council. And even people who are involved don't always know who's responsible for what. And I don't expect them to. It's our problem to sort that out. But it does mean that we get lumped together with them, particularly if you get outside Northampton. As far as anyone else is concerned, in Buckinghamshire or anywhere like that, it's just one seamless problem.
So people don't readily, fairly obviously, as you say, differentiate from one council to the next, so you get blamed regardless?
Particularly when it's negative, yeah. When you're given the credit, then sometimes they sort out who actually did the good stuff, but not always.
And as far as retail's concerned, you are, as you told me earlier, retired now from commercial property market where you were involved with a company in the town. Do you understand why people, big companies are the ones we've mentioned already, the big stores, vacate this place? Well, it's because they don't make enough money. Simple as that. Simple as that. It's nothing to do with rents, it's nothing to do with rates. No. As I was explaining when we were chatting beforehand, it may seem odd, but rent is actually voluntary. We hear a lot of talk about the very high rents that landlords charge. Landlords only charge what they can get. And if a tenant isn't prepared to pay it, he doesn't come and occupy their shop. And he will only come if he can be sure of making a living out of it. So to some extent, the talk that we have at the moment about business rates and things like that is a bit of a red herring because people look at the cost of occupying a property as a whole, rent and rates. Rob Purdy, where does the bid sit? First of all, for anybody that doesn't understand how it works, the Business Improvement District is effectively a group of businesses that come together and put a bit of extra money in the pot. For what purpose? How does it operate? In many bids, the money that's levied through the business rates actually for within a distinct geographic area, which here in Northampton is the Inner Ring Road, is to be used for added value, as one of your previous speakers talked about. It's about marketing and promotion. I think it's interesting, though, one of your previous speakers talked about uncharted territory in terms of the third sector. It's actually, I think we're in uncharted territory in the retail and business sector. We're actually dealing with structural change, which is massive. And within that context, I think bids probably need to look quite hard at what they're doing within their own town centres, how they're engaging with the businesses that are paying them, and trying to come up with different strategies that are more effective in a changed marketplace. If the councils were doing their job, would we need the bid? The bid should be about additionality, is the technical term. It should be about added value. It's an American idea, isn't it? It is. It started in America and Canada, came over here about 2005. There were about 200 bids. They're not all town centres. They can cover whole towns. We've got an industrial bid here in Northampton as well. There's one on the Brackmills Industrial Estate, yeah. Yeah, and we talk to each other quite a lot about that. The principle is the same. I mean, the good thing with a bid is the mechanic, the way the money is levied, means that you have a constant stream of income. And that means you can plan and actually deliver stuff over a long period of time. And you spend that income in what way? How would people that aren't members of those businesses, that don't know that you do it, how would they realise there's anything different? So what we're trying to do is run promotions. I mean, there's two elements to it. One is to try and build the brand, try and put things on in the town centre. We do a lot of that. We've done Street Circus in the past and enhanced that with performance artists. We've worked with the music festival, we've worked with the carnival, with Morsia, who's here tonight. So what we want to try and do is build on the already existing community events. We've talked with Laura at the Happy Hood about things we might be able to do with them. But we also try and bring in more commercial things to bring some vibe to the town centre. And we work with the Borough Council on Christmas lights, for example. There was a time when you paid out, maybe you still do, for a PSC. Do you still do that? We don't do that at the moment, but we have been asked to contribute through the Borough Council to extending overtime for the police. We've got a 16-day action plan in place
for the town centre coming up, which will mean that we've got better coverage throughout the Christmas period. And personally, I do think visibility of the police is a big factor in what we need in the town. The town is actually very safe. It's a low priority risk for most of the police, but that isn't necessarily the perception of people. And we do have some particular issues with kids cycling around the town and various other problems. If we can have that visibility, I think people just feel generally happier about what they're doing.
Let me just pick you up on that point. It's a bugbear of mine, because in my travels in other countries just lately, I've seen kids cycling around the towns on proper cycle lanes. I've seen kids on skateboards in proper areas where they can do it. If you walk in the cycle lane, boy, are you in trouble. Why don't we do something like that down the middle of Abington Street, where they could cycle safely and perfectly happily?
Well, I think anybody who cycles anywhere in this country is you're sort of taking your life in your hands, frankly, because we don't have that sort of infrastructure. And I think that is one of the areas where the local authorities historically have always been where we would push against trying to bring fundamentals into place. Very early on when I started, we talked about having those fundamentals in place, making the place clean, green, safe and open.
Is it as safe as it could be, Tim Hadland?
Nowhere is ever as safe as it could be. We can always do better, but I certainly agree with Rob. It's very largely about perception. One bad story has a habit of travelling very far and wide. He also picked up on the other thing, which is being clean and safe. I think we would all agree here, if we're honest about it, that the town is cleaner now than it's been for a very long time. And that's just the start. We're getting cleaner and cleaner all the time. Two grounds, really. One is clearing up the mess, and one is making sure that the mess doesn't happen in the first place by coming down hard on littering.
I saw some people shaking their heads when you talked about it being as clean as it might be. There's people over here I'm going to come to on my right-hand side as I wander down the pews. Yes, so tell us who you are, if you wouldn't mind, please.
So my name's Oscar. I live right in the town centre on Hazelwood Road. I've lived there for about 5 years. When I moved into the town, it was one of the most desirable streets, I think, in the town. We had the England rugby captain live there, for example. Since then, the houses are now probably, I think, 95% of the houses in the street are HMOs or flats. The comment about it being clean is just... I'm just shaking my head in disbelief at that comment. If somebody would like to come and actually walk down Hazelwood Road, where we live, and see the amount of litter and rubbish down there, they'd realise just how bad it is. There is antisocial behaviour, there is rough sleeping, there is drug dealing. It's beyond belief that the people on the panel think that things are improving when they're clearly not living in and amongst it. It's got to the stage now where we are looking to move, because despite the fact that we have the ability to go to the theatre, which is fabulous, despite the fact we have some nice cafes around us, as soon as it turns 7 o'clock at night, it's not a nice place to live.
Okay, let's go behind you, where there's a couple of people who want to have a say. Yes, madam, what do you want? Your name, please.
It's Michelle. I own the Magic Bean Emporium on St. Giles Street, and there's quite a few things I want to touch upon. First of all, I'd like to know the postal codes of the majority of the panels sitting on there, and how many of them actually live close to town centre, because in a period of 8 months I've been burgled twice. I clean heroin needles from the back of my shop. I've had fireworks thrown at my shop just a week ago. I've had just numerous things. So safe, that's a complete no-no. And other issues like parking, you trying to attract, with the bid saying they're trying to attract people into town. Do you think increasing the parking from Monday to Sunday, 7 to 7, is going to bring, when there's already so little to come into town for? My reports have, I've had a decrease of about 40%. So anyone here in business can understand that is a very, very big dip. I almost closed in August and was encouraged by the council to stay open, but then never saw them again.
Let me ask you, as you've said all of that, without in any way trying to demur from it whatsoever, do you feel there's anything about Northampton you can love?
Honestly, at the moment, no.
Okay. Let's just pick up on some of those things that have just been raised. First of all, the question about whether the place really is safe and clean. Wes, what do you think about that?
Oh, hello. I've, in answer to your question, just so you know, I don't live in Northampton Town Centre, but I spend more time in Northampton Town Centre than I do at home. And I clean my streets outside when the council don't. So I think that's the first thing to recognise, is that I understand your problems, I understand your issues, and I understand your frustrations, hence the reason why I'm here, because I'm not prepared to give up. And, you know, my voice will be heard. I will make sure that my voice is heard. I've been on the radio numerous times, and I've also been on the Cron plenty of times as well. So I'm going to continue to fight that battle on every front, because I'm in. There's no way I can be out. My family have owned a business here for 40 years. I'm going to continue that mantle, whether it means that it's a bricks and mortar business or a bricks and clicks business. I'm going to continue to trade in Northampton. I think there are obviously some frustrations. It isn't, in my opinion, as clean as I would like it to be. I think Tim's, I feel sad for Tim at times, because I do feel that Tim gets the raw end of every stick. I think there are some good points. And I think we've got to go back to the fact of the Mayor Giuliani concept of, if they break the windows, we fix it. And we don't allow these people that are fly tipping, we don't allow these people that are messy in our town to take it over. Because I love this town's my town, and I'm not going to let somebody trash it.
Wes, thank you. Laura Graham, before again I come to Tim, your magazine purports to deliver good news to us. Hearing what you just have in the last few minutes, do you have to wade through that to find good news?
No, can I come back to the what postcode? I'm proudly NN1. I live just off Clare Street on Spencer Road in the town centre. I completely agree with the rubbish issues. It is a problem, and the Happy Hood isn't trying to pretend that there aren't issues in Northampton. But I have no agenda. I'm not here on the side of the council or bid or retailers or anything. I'm a resident and a community activist. That's why I'm here. And I believe that the rubbish is a problem, the safety is an issue, but I believe that we all have the power to do something about it. I'm not happy that the council doesn't pick up all the rubbish on my street, but I do. So, like I said, like Wes said, I'm not going to let anyone make my street, my town, unsafe and unclean, and I really feel like we have a responsibility, as much as we don't want it, but unfortunately this is the reality. We all have a responsibility to be good citizens and fight against the minority of people who are trying to make the town dirty and unsafe, because the majority of us here want it to be great.
So is that the answer to the questions that have just been put? Is it down to people, not just relying on the council?
I don't think it is the answer, and it's not the ideal answer. The ideal answer is that if we're paying council tax, then the rubbish gets cleared away and then there's no more rubbish between each pickup. That is the ideal answer. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't see that, so we have to take some responsibility for the streets that we're living on.
Okay, let me move over to this lady who's anxious to say something to me and has been for a while. Tell me who you are and what you want to say.
My name is Dagmar King, and I'm 71 years old. And I'm speaking not just for myself, but for all the people at my age group. We don't like coming into town because we don't know if we're going to get run over by a bicycle. We don't like coming into town because it's messy. We don't like coming into town because bugger all's there for us to get, apart from a pub or a cafe. And worst of all, the council can do something about the homeless. They make their tents, they're ignored. They're begging, they're ignored. Walk past as if nobody's going to see them. That's what we don't like. We don't feel safe. It's not a nice place to come into shopping for. There's no place nice to meet, apart from having to go to a cafe and then buy something, wait for a friend. So what is there in town for us? And yes, I do love my town. I've been here a long, long time. My children were born here. My son's buried here. Parks are beautiful. Some people are nice, but the council could get their flaming fingers out and do something about it. They can make them roll up their tents, they can stop the begging, and they can clean the overfill of all the bins that you have lying around.
Despite all of that, why do you love Northampton?
The parks, the people, my friends, tea dancing. You know, they're nice people. I made a lot of friends here. I'm 71 years old, I've been here a long time.
Thank you very much. Clean the place up, she says. I am careful to avoid some of the extra words. We are in a church, after all. Gentleman at the back, let me come to the back of All Saints Church and ask you, sir, to tell me who you are and what is it you want to say.
Hello, my name's Rene Schwartz. I've lived in Northampton for 8 years. I lived in Gold Street for 5. And the main issue that really, I mean, people in Northampton are fantastic. Northampton's a great place. It's got plenty of people with talents, but the real issue is money. That's what it boils down to, in my opinion. Now, when I lived on Gold Street, I noticed, they were keeping the town centre very clean. I mean, majority of the time, it appeared to me that it was just jet washing homeless people out of the way. Now, it's fantastic to have a clean town centre, but then now, because of all this money that seems to have been spent irresponsibly on buildings that cost too much, we now have an issue where bins aren't being collected in the outskirts. I think that it all boils down to the management of Northampton and really punishing businesses with business rates and the public with cutbacks. That's the real issue that we need to focus on.
Thank you very much. Let me come back to Tim Hadland then, before I come to this lady who's got her arm up on the right-hand side. I'll come to you in a second, madam. Let me come to you, Tim, so we don't lose sight of some of the things that have been said. People don't accept what you said about the place being cleaner. They don't accept what you're saying about the place being safer. And there's also the question about whether you've done the research for developing arts projects and so on.
Well, so let's start with cleanliness. We put in place a new contract in June of this year, having inherited one that we had to run through for 7 years. We've put a lot of work into getting the start right, and there has been an improvement since June. We're about halfway through that deep clean-up process, and I think everyone would have to acknowledge there have been improvements. We're not there yet, and we would never be satisfied, I think, with the cleanliness, but it is at least on the way up. We've acknowledged the problem and we're doing something about it. Safety is a broader issue because we don't run the police. We can deal with street lighting and things like that, but we can't move people on the street itself. We're not responsible for highways. We don't have those powers. But we obviously want to work in partnership with all the organisations to make the place a safer place.
And the research into the arts projects?
Research is always going on. We tried to buy a property in the town centre to make it a hub for community and arts projects recently. Unfortunately, it was at auction and we were unsuccessful. We've been talking to other owners of larger shops that have become vacant to try and find ways of using those for community uses. As far as encouraging the arts in general is concerned, we've done an awful lot of work, and we're just going to start spending £13 million next year on a creative hub at the bottom of Guildhall Road for arts businesses and creative businesses to start up and grow.
And Rob Purdy, is that something where the money from the businesses that contribute to the bid could play a part? Are they interested in encouraging that sort of activity, the arts activities we heard about?
Yes, absolutely, but it's about all community involvement. I mean, the point is, the thing that's coming over is it's all about the people wanting to make the place a better place, so it involves all of us getting involved. And I think one of the big things is aligning people so that the money that we've got, and we don't all have huge budgets to be honest, is to make it go as far as we possibly can and do as much as we possibly can. And I think the businesses recognise that in order to do that, they have to be part of the community, and for me in particular within the town centre, because that's the area I'm responsible for, it is about working with the Royal and Derngate, but also maybe the Deco, who are just outside the bid area, but do lots of fabulous stuff. We've been talking to people like Laura at the Happy Hood, and some other groups who want to put performance art on, who want to clean up some areas through painting it and so on. So we're actively trying to encourage those people where relatively small amounts of money can actually make quite a big difference.
Solutions is a good place to move to, Laura. Let me come to you, Laura Graham. Where should we start by looking for solutions to some of the things that we've been talking about?
Well, I think we've got a talented group of people in this room who could come up with amazing solutions. It's just harnessing that and getting that to the people who actually have power. It's interesting, with the Borough Council obviously hold a lot of power in terms of, arts and culture. Unfortunately, they just turned us down for a grant today, so they won't be helping the Happy Hood. But that's not going to stop us. So I think this is part of the point that I want to make to people is that, you can do things yourself. You don't need permission necessarily. Go and make a change. And, you know, I have zero resources. We have very little experience of putting a magazine together, but we did it anyway. And we're not going to rely on the council, unfortunately, to help us. We're going to do it ourselves, and nothing's going to stop us. And I think that's about the solution base, is I understand everybody's points and I agree with everybody's points. What are we going to do about it? And I think we can all ask ourselves that question on a daily basis. What am I doing about it to solve the problem, to lobby the people in power, to rally my community to make a change? That's what I'm talking about, so we can all do that.
Let me come to this gentleman here. Yes, tell us who you are.
My name is David Barrow. I'm chairman of the National Leather Collection, which not many people know is based in Northampton. It's got the most amazing collection of leather. If we think about Northampton, what are we great at? We're great at leather. We've even got a football club called the Cobblers. Why can't we have a unique thing in this country, bring tourists in, based on leather? In Northampton, in the Grosvenor Centre, rotting away, we have the National Leather Collection. It has a 9th century Quran there. It has fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It has underwear from ancient Greeks. It has royal saddles. It has got books from Versailles. It has got the history of leather in Northamptonshire. It is an amazing collection. But it's not just that. We have industry, we have businesses making leather shoes, leather goods. Why? And we're unique in the country in this. If we don't feature this, we don't use it, we will lose it. Somebody else will come up with it. Last weekend I was up in Leeds. They have the Armoury Museum. It is the most amazing collection of armoury. That came from London. They've built it, it's fantastic. If we don't use the National Leather Collection in Northampton, it'll go back to London. Milton Keynes will get it. Someone else will get it. But it's beyond that. It's the whole leather environment. We could make a fantastic centre here of leather, workers, restoration, conservation, all sorts of things, goods, bags, etc. We're looking at gift horse in the mouth. Why don't we get off our arses and do something about it?
Let me just ask you, when you say, why don't we do something about it, who should take the lead in that?
Well, I think it has to start at the top. You know, we badger away as trustees to the council, to church, to trust, to get money so we survive. But it's bigger than that. There's got to be top down. If you think about it, what's happening in Brackley, Silverstone, Brixworth? They've got a centre of motor industry there now. It's a world centre. Why don't we just look at what they're doing and copy it in Northampton? A leather.
Thank you. Let me come to a lady at the other end of the pew behind you. We are in a church, so we have to reach across. And if you tell me who you are.
Hello, I'm Jane Birch. I'm a borough councillor and a county councillor, and I've been involved in arts education all my life. This town has the most amazing university arts courses. A lot of them based around leather, a lot of them based around fashion, shoes, handbags. They do a lot of work with motorcycle leather companies and so on. We have the creatives in this town who have been trained here to a very high standard. It's a brilliant, brilliant arts training. We don't keep them in the town. I know there are schemes to set up creative hubs and keep our people here. This is what we want. The other thing is, of course, London is less than an hour away. Look at the price of a studio in London. Look at the price of the equivalent in Northampton. Why are we not marketing all our creative industries, all our creative spaces for people outside this town? We are in the middle of the country. It's very easy to get from London, from Birmingham, from Oxford, from all the other places. We should have these people working in Northampton, giving the students from the university the opportunity to move forward and develop their businesses. And they are brilliant. The shoes, the fashion, links with the university, links with the theatre, the museum. We're missing lots of opportunities. They're all there, and we should take the very best opportunities that we have.
Carly Summerfield, sitting behind you, is from the university, and obviously when we talk about young people, we shouldn't just focus on students, but since students have been mentioned, again, the question, is Northampton a welcoming place for young people, apart from those that go out on a Friday night and perhaps cause a problem for Father Oliver Coss and this church from time to time on a Friday evening, doing things they might not? Is it a welcoming place? Is it a good place for young people?
I think it is, and I think we shouldn't mistake the bad deeds of a few. You know, there's a population of something like 11,000 students, so I think the problems that we have are, you need to keep them in proportion. Actually, I live in the town centre. I'm an NN1 as well. In fact, I've lived with my family just off Abington Street, so I can really relate to a lot of the things that people have been saying. And I'm raising my kids in the town centre, and I absolutely agree with you that having more people living in the town centre, especially as there perhaps isn't as much need for retail space. I think we have to repurpose buildings for housing, and not just student housing, actually, all sorts of housing.
And that's something a lot of towns are having to consider, of course, isn't it?
Absolutely, not even just in the UK. The seismic change in what's happening, to the retail sector, it's not even just happening in the UK. I was reading this morning about a new development in Ohio, where they're mixing retail, leisure, and housing for a new mall development. So it's even in America, everybody's tackling the same challenge, which is change.
Change is certainly a key word to all that we're talking about tonight. At the back of the room, not on our panel, and I will come to you in a second, so in the middle of the room, you want to say something. In the back of the room, and I've deliberately not come to him earlier on because Tim Hadland's been taking the flak remarkably bravely, is Councillor Jonathan Dunn, who is the leader of Northampton Borough Council. You've been listening to this, you've been making notes. I can see your pad is full of notes. What do you make of what you've heard?
Yes, hello Stuart, and evening everybody. I'm sorry to tiptoe in the back, I was late. I've been to London to see some government folk. It's interesting to hear people's comments. I think the key thing I would start with saying is me, Tim Hadland, everybody on the council, we care as much as you do. We don't do this job because it brings glory, it brings money. We do it because we care. And if I can be slightly cynical, you can spend 20 minutes here tonight, an hour. We do it day in, day out. I promise you, we care. Let's talk about some of the particular issues that people have raised. A lot of them are people I know, Dagmar, Jane there, David Barrow, Cardi, and so on. Let's start with the cleanliness thing. The Borough Council is responsible for cleanliness. Now, we have a budget of £30 million a year. That's a heck of a lot of money. But spread that across housing and homelessness and many other things, we now spend £11 million of your money on cleaning up. That is more than ever. Now, is it done well? Is it well managed? We can gladly have that debate. We believe the new contract is pretty well managed. But that's £11 million of your money. We've never spent so much of your money cleaning up other people's mess.
Except that people are saying, Jonathan, they're not seeing the evidence of that.
Well, we've got a couple of possibilities here. There are more people collecting rubbish. If you just look on the streets, you'll see a guy who's been around for a few weeks now cleaning up chewing gum. I don't know who drops the chewing gum. I bet it's nobody in here. But nevertheless, we have somebody employed now cleaning up chewing gum. You would have seen, for the first time in many years, the guys going around with the barrows sweeping the streets, really getting into the corners, not just the mechanical machines. There's the bin collection. The bigger problem is fly tipping and littering, really, isn't it? This is the bit that I think most of the comments here are about. Now, I guarantee you something else as well. The people sat in this church now, if they want to throw a sofa away, they ring somebody up and arrange it, or they get a way of taking it to the tip. But you go around the place and you see sofas in gardens and on streets and so on. You see litter bags open because they're put out on the wrong day. You see businesses who are supposed to these days have commercial arrangements putting their rubbish out. Now, I don't mind how much of your money we want spent, but we haven't got a heck of a lot of money. And if what you want is far more of your money spent on collecting rubbish and cleaning up other people's rubbish, we'll do it. But we're doing it as fast as we can, and we think we've got to optimum. We think £11 million of your money every year is enough to do it. That's just one of the first points. Many other things have been mentioned, and I'm happy to talk about all of them. A lot of the things on the safety side are really policing issues, but I'd happily touch on a couple of things and what the council does. This council is one of the most active in the number of campaigns we have, whether it's Safe Nights Out campaign, helping young people out in the evening so they don't get into trouble. We've got knife crime campaigns going on at the moment. We've just won £600,000 from the government to promote some of these campaigns because we're seen as doing them really well. We introduced a while ago a thing called Public Spaces Protection Orders. Now, these are things that allow us, people for a long time nagged us that we couldn't restrict antisocial behaviour, so we brought these in. I have to say, slight issue with the BBC here, when we announced that we were doing this, the headlines were, Council tries to stop people having picnics in parks. I would say we get behind these things. I say if we want our places to be safe, we support them. We don't talk them down. Let's work together and do it. Believe me, there's no lack of commitment on this council's part. Homelessness is a really important issue, and it's one that's in everybody's minds now, and I mention it because a couple of people have mentioned homelessness. Now, we have in this town a council that runs a night shelter. Most don't, but we do. Since February last year, volunteers have mainly staffed that. The council runs it, as it were, but volunteers staff it. They give thousands of hours of their time. And you know, you may want to give a round of applause for this or not, but those volunteers have turned 167 people's lives round. So those people are now in settled accommodation, often moving towards jobs and so on. But we've got to work together on that. And please, and don't think me nasty, but every pound or every sandwich you give somebody on the street takes them one step further from getting off the street. Give to a charity, give to the charities that you know and support, and we support them, the Hope Centre and all those. We support and we work closely with those. But if that's a problem, we've got to say, we've got to do it compassionately. But we shouldn't just think it's for the council to give homes, because it's not. As the gentleman over there said, these are complex issues, and there's a lot more support required for people. We need to bring them in, and we need to do what we can. Through the night shelter, we've managed to achieve that, and the help of all the many other agencies as well.
Okay, let me move to the
comment on
thank you, Jonathan, for that. Let me just come to the gentleman in front of you, because when you mentioned that about homeless people, he shook his head.
Yeah, I'm Pastor Stan Robertson. I'm the Town Centre Street Chaplain and coordinator of Project 1615. And we take breakfast to the homeless every single day. A hot cup of tea and a hot breakfast first thing in the morning, because it's the only way they're going to get a hot meal, and it's the only way they're going to get a bit of dignity. I mean,
so you don't agree with the view that you're taking them further away from somewhere off the streets?
Absolutely not, because when you think the percentage of the homeless people on the street at the moment, there's a vast majority of them who the council will not help because they live outside, because they haven't got this so-called local connection. So therefore, they can't get in the night shelter. That includes women who don't have local connections, who are most vulnerable, including one who is 65 years of age. They can't get the help from our borough council. So somebody has to do something, and it's just called giving a person a bit of dignity and a bit of self-respect, and a bit of pride, and a bit of self-worth and a bit of value. Yes, we have a night shelter, and we support the volunteers of the night shelter. We don't support the policies around a lot of the night shelter, but we do support the night shelter, and we do encourage people to go in there on a regular basis. But homelessness has been mentioned a couple of times, and this thing about, and I get where business come from, and from a business point of view, you don't really want sleeping bags and duvets outside your shop 24/7. But there are solutions. There are empty buildings. You could put lockers in them for these guys to store their stuff, so it's not outside your business all day long. You could provide them with a toilet facility. You could provide them with basic human dignity. You could provide them with a safe place to camp where they could put their tents so they're not stuck in the town centre, where the borough council clean-up teams don't have to come and take them away. There are things that the borough council could do, utilising the facilities they already have that are sitting empty, where these guys can be safe, they can be monitored, the agencies can reach them, businesses are not affected, local people are not complaining about the mess on the street. And I do get all of that. I don't always agree with it, and I think sometimes people can be absolutely cruel to the homeless community, and the way sometimes they're treated on a weekend by the drunks and the people who come out of towns is absolutely ridiculous. And there is no council workers after closing time. I mean, homelessness isn't a 9 till 3 or a 9 till 5. Homelessness is 7 days a week. Homelessness even works on a bank holiday. poverty doesn't stop because a bank holiday comes around, even though you won't see an outreach worker. It's a continual thing, and there are facilities in place that the Our Borough Council could utilise without any trouble at all to keep them safe, to keep them off the street, and to work with businesses so people do come into town and don't complain about the mess of homelessness. And I could go on forever, but I'm going to stop because I'll end up upsetting the Borough Council again.
Well, I'll leave you to talk to Councillor Nunn, who's sitting behind you. I'm sure there's a conversation you can have. And I have spoken to you before, so I'm going to just take somebody that we haven't spoken to already. There was a gentleman down here, I think, who wanted to say something. Was it you? I think we have heard from you as well, so haven't we? If you can be very brief.
You did hear from me before, but I wanted to just end by suggesting there are some things that we can do to improve the town centre. I'm a big fan of zoning. I think we need to think again about how we zone our shops. Rather than having a charity shop and a nail bar and a cafe sat next to a jeweller's, there could be an opportunity generally if we to try and put the same type of shops in the same type of place and actually give people a reason for coming somewhere. I don't think we've done that enough. And I wholeheartedly support the incentivisation of the arts and bringing those sort of creative industries into the town centre.
Thank you very much. Let me come back to our panel, because we have heard from some of the people that put their hands up. And as I said earlier on, if you do have things you want to say and we haven't had time to include you, because we are closing on towards the end of our time, we will take note of you and we will talk to you subsequently. But let me just come back to the panel to try and round up some of the things that we've been listening to. Let's start with you, Laura, if we can. You've heard what the leader of the Borough Council has just had to say about what they are trying to do. You've heard people actually poo-poo some of that. Are there solutions, are there positives that you're hearing from tonight that you believe can be taken forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest positive is that people are here. Regardless of our differences of opinions or similar opinions, people are here because they care and they want the town to be different, they want it to be better. So I think we'd have more of a problem if we were just sat here, the four of us, and nobody engaged in this. So I'm loving the fact that there's such fierce debate and passion coming out from the people of Northampton, and that's what we need to harness, and that's the change. We are the change, all sat here.
And we've heard from your boss, as it were. You're not going to disagree with him, I presume, but would you agree with Laura that there are positives to come from all of this?
Yeah, yes, there are. I think we realise that we all have common problems, not only locally but nationally. We've got to work hard to try and solve them, and we only do that together. It can't be all the council, it's got to be all of us. Can I just pick up on one or two points that have occurred during the time? Going back and back and back, I think it was Francis Lee who works at the Engine. That is one of the organisations that we've been pleased to support financially. We have a business incentive scheme to support independent business in the town centre, and that has created umpteen jobs and spent £1.25 million over the last 4 years and brought in well over £6 million in independent investment into the town to help business and help the town centre prosper. And I think that's a very important point to emphasise. We've also heard passionate things about the National Leather Collection, and rightly so. We're currently engaged in a very big museum project, which you'll all be aware of, paid for by the proceeds from a certain statue, and we're spending the thick end of £8 million on the museum and its collections, which of course includes the National Shoe Collection. So we're very passionate about leather. We know that we've got to do more, and we're trying to work with shoe manufacturers and shoe retailers to bring the offer together and make it a hub for the town. And obviously the National Shoe Collection or the National Leather Collection ought to provide very much a catalyst for that. But that's a very big project, but it's very much on our radar.
Okay, Wes, positives from you?
Positives from me is that, as I said, for radio listeners, there's 200 people in the room. What an amazing turnout. Obviously, people care, and I think my message to everybody is continue banging the drum. The moment you're silent is the moment things stop changing. So you've got to continue. It's up to you. Everybody sitting here has got a voice, and we've got to continue putting that message across to the council so that they understand your problems, because the moment you go silent, nothing changes.
And Rob Purdy, will you take things back to the bid to encourage them to be positive about Northampton?
Absolutely. We've got a board meeting tomorrow, and these are just the very topics that would be on that board list, with some specific things. I don't want anybody here to think we're in denial or complacent. We know it's not perfect, but because we're on the inside sometimes, we know how hard many people are working to try and turn things around. At the very beginning, I said it was the great thing for me about the town is the love that people have for it, the passion. What we have to do is make sure that we violently agree with each other and that we positively get together to try and make a change. Actually throwing rocks at each other isn't very helpful at all, frankly. And for too often, I think we've been in that position. What we need to do is understand what we can all do, what we can all achieve, and then work together to try and achieve that. A couple of issues that have been raised around shoes, and Tim's mentioned the museum. At our conference recently, we talked about trying to do three things in the town. One was put vacant units back into productive use. We've got some pop-ups beginning to happen in the new year. Very happy to talk about that idea about the homeless people. That is something that could make a big difference. We want to do something around the market square because we think it is a fantastic facility, a great asset, and it needs to be used more than it has been historically. And finally, we wanted to focus on shoes being what the town is all about. We absolutely agree with what everybody is saying. The issue is about finding the way of delivering that with the lack of money that's around, because we can't get away from it. There aren't large wadges of money around. When people talk to me about regenerate like Altrincham, my answer to that is Altrincham got £3 to £5 million worth of investment to kickstart it. I'd love somebody to come along and say we can get that sort of money. I don't think we will, so it's down to us.
Rob, thank you. Before we finish, I just want to go to our host here in this beautiful church, Father Oliver Cost. Thank you, first of all, for having us all here tonight in All Saints Church. You've been listening patiently to what's been said. You're literally in the heart of Northampton in this place. You see all the things that people have been talking about going on around you. What is your view about Northampton, and should we love it?
I think we definitely should. I've been here for 2 years now in Northampton. I'm a relatively recent import. And I was asked to come here, I was asked to come and take on this church and to try and work towards cementing its position in the town centre. And what's wonderful about standing in here is that you've got a real definite sense of history. And we do forget our history quite easily, and even more so when it's convenient. About 335 years ago, we were in a not too dissimilar situation. The whole town had burnt to the ground. The government had sent in commissioners to deal with the apportionment of land and how to work out how we went forward. And from those ashes, and from a far lower starting point than we are in now, we'd raised up something really significant, something which we were very proud of, and something which we're proud of still. And it's a little bit like having a classic car. That you drive it around, you're very proud of it, you polish it, but sometimes it's a bit difficult to get it to fire as once it did when it was new. And remaking some of those connections, remaking some of the things that are actually special. We've got a building here that seats 1,000 people, and we've got 200 in it. We can add more people to this conversation. We've got a wonderful heritage that we can draw good lines from to today. I didn't even know the Dead Sea Scrolls had fragments sitting in the Grosvenor Centre, and I'm a biblical scholar. I would have loved to have known that. Why on earth isn't that on big display, on big placards going down Abington Street? Not to mention our great leather heritage. We've got to make some links between our commerce and how that's changing and our own shopping habits. We've got to make some links between our nighttime economy and our own drinking habits sometimes, or those of our kids or our friends and the people around us. We've got to make links between a homeless shelter that provides the ability for people to move on and other people who provide the right for people to be safe on our streets when they need to be or choose to be. Those things are not an either-or decision. They can run side by side. And we need to make good links between students and education and improving the life chances of our young people. But I think the principal reason that Northampton's worth loving is that it is not perfect. Perfect things don't need love because they're lovely already. So Northampton, because it is not perfect, is worthy of our love because we want to see it become perfect.
Oliver, thank you very much. We're going to end our broadcast from All Saints Church on that. There's one thing I want you to do for me before we leave. But before we get to that, would you please put your hands together, thank our panel and all those that have contributed tonight. The thing we would like to do is to try and fasten on to what people have been saying, that we can help ourselves. We shouldn't just leave it to the council. There are things they need to do, but there are things that we can do. If we really love Northampton, things that we can make a difference about. Would you like to, those that have got them with you, take out your mobile phone for me? And what I'd like you to do is on Twitter, please make a pledge to what you can do to love Northampton. And that's the hashtag to put on it, please. Hashtag love Northampton. Now, not everybody's got a mobile, I gather that. Not everybody's on Twitter. But those that are, those that can, please do. And we will collate those. And maybe in a month or two, maybe sometime in the middle of next year, we'll come back and just see how many of those pledges have been fulfilled. Maybe it's a pledge you think other people should make. Maybe that's what you want to put down on your message to us. Please do that. Send us the tweet to BBC Northampton, at BBC Northampton, with the hashtag Love Northampton. Thank you all very much for coming and for being involved in this. We love Northampton. Thank you.